Welcome to the DevReady podcast, where we're helping non-techs build better tech. Today I'm welcomed by Jeff, one of the co-founders from Cassie. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey mate, how you going?
Good. Thanks for coming on and joining us on the podcast. So I'll let you introduce what Cassie does, because I'll probably give some explanation, but I won't do it justice.
Fair enough. Honestly, I do often like it when someone else explains it because they can usually make it simpler than I can ever make it sound. But hi guys, I'm Jeff. I'm from Cassie. We're a self-service billboard advertising platform. And I say billboard, but I mean sort of screens, digital screens in any sort of public areas. So billboards, bus shelters, gyms, anywhere that's got a screen that can serve ads, we serve ads too. The point of our software is essentially just to have a self-service portal where people can go in, they can choose which screens they want to advertise on, and they're used to, say, a Facebook or Google Ads kind of flexible way of advertising where they can just run ads and only pay for the ads they buy and only run ads whenever they want to run them. That's pretty much what we make easy through our platform.
Yeah, how did the idea come about, Jeff? So when did it all start? What was the that point where you said we're going to put ads on digital screens? Where did it all start?
Honestly, you're going back a few years, and I hardly remember. But we started off as a agency, I guess. We were. I say I guess because we were mostly doing design work for people. We were doing sort of the consultancy stuff. We were working with startups and small business, and we would do websites and brochures and all of that. I have an engineering background, so I'm an aerospace engineer by qualification. Didn't really work in the industry because I didn't really enjoy it, but I learned a few skills through that. And I think throughout that entire time running that agency side of things, I had a bit of an itch to do something that was technical, something engineering-esque. We had an opportunity where one of the clients that we were working with had just won a government grant, to commercialize a educational product. They came to us because they'd already been working with us for design stuff and said, well, can we get a billboard up near some schools? And their product was an educational product. They wanted to sort of be in front of the teachers and principal, so they can sort of get some buy-in from there. And they asked us if we could organize it, and we sort of said, yeah, I mean, sure, how hard can it be? We've done, Facebook ads and Google ads before, and then these are all digital billboards. It's got to be like a digital way of buying it. And the first thing we kind of did was like, how do you buy a billboard? And we Googled it. And we quickly discovered that it was like, this was going to be harder than we thought, because you had to get in contact with the company, the specific company that ran that specific billboard. And they told us, you've got to have a minimum of a week. It's going to cost you 20 grand and all that sort of stuff. And we were like, no, this client does not have that kind of budget and they don't want to be locked in. So we kept Googling, looking for a way to buy it online. And there was just nothing there. We ended up not being able to run anything for that client because they only had $5,000 to play with, and it just wasn't enough to open any doors. No one returned our calls. It was a nightmare, and we basically had our asses handed to us. It was pretty rough. So we kind of thought, well, there's this gap in this market. We've got this problem as an agency, and can we make this sort of internal tool that just help us do these billboard ads for some of these customers? Because it wasn't like we hadn't been asked about billboards before, but this is the first time we sort of dived on it. And we thought, okay, well, let's do it. It's not there, let's build it. And we just sort of went ahead and started prototyping stuff, and that, eventually turned into a product. It was run under the agency's brand Heurist for a while, so it was Cassie by Heurist, and for a long time it was just this sort of side project, and then eventually it got more attention than the agency itself, and then we closed down the agency. We didn't, not many of us particularly enjoyed doing that anyway, so we went in on the SaaS product. So that's kind of how Cassie was born.
So you found a real problem. Yeah, really nice. I think the space, there was nothing in the space in the early days. So when you probably got a good timing in terms of what it is. But how does the model sort of work? What did you learn through that journey? Obviously, you went and looked to put an ad up, it's going to cost us 20 grand minimum. That's a core problem to solve. There's only a certain amount of clients that can actually afford that sort of budget, especially for one billboard. It's extreme, especially when you go into the world of digital. So where did it start? So from there, we looked at a bit of a technology field, building that, planning that. What was the first step to get the prototype moving?
It was getting the supply on board and sort of figuring out, like you're saying, the model around how everyone can be happy in this situation, because ultimately the sale price is 20 grand for a week. So how do you sell 20 grand for $100 was really the
that was
right?
Interesting problem to solve.
We couldn't really, obviously we couldn't discount it and all that, so we had to be a bit more clever. The fundamental problem was that you have, say, 6 slots on a billboard. They run a slideshow of ads, and there's usually 6 clients or 6 available spots for 6 clients. Typically, a billboard owner would struggle to sell all 6 at any given point in time. And what ends up happening is that it just keeps looping through 3. So our proposal was essentially, can we take those blank spots,
the rest of it,
don't have it, and fill it for them? So apply no contract to me, apply no sort of minimum spends or anything like that. I fill it, and I'm only charged if I can fill it. And you're getting passive revenue was essentially the agreement. And that's how that works. So basically, instead of selling the slot, we sold that point in time. So when that slot came up, we know that ad is going to run for 10 seconds. We know it's on this billboard. We know, what the likely audience is going to be, because they had all those audience models and stuff, and they told us, okay, so this is the CPM, so the cost per 1,000 eyeballs that they were going to want for it. This is the going rate, and this is the audience that's in front of it. Sell this spot, 10 seconds for 20 cents. And that's what we did. So we kept selling it. So we automated the sale of each 20-second spot, or 10-second spot, sorry, for 20 cents, 30 cents, whatever that happens to be. And then as a user comes in on our side, what they're saying is serve my ad between this time and this time, and then it becomes really flexible for them because they're only buying the times that their specific slot showed up. So they're able to spend $100 because we haven't made it any cheaper as such, but we have chunked it down so that people can cherry pick when and where they want their ads to show, and that gives them that sort of financial flexibility of kind of going, oh, well, I only want this time. I don't want to spend a full 20 grand for the full, 24/7 exposure across a week.
So you really just bring it down to being able to chunk it to any sort of budget, Neil. It's just even testing it. I'll throw $100 and just see what happens. And then you might commit to 5 and then 10 or 20, depending on how the business goes, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people do. So a lot of the time there is that, I suppose, it's not insecurity as such, but people want flexibility. They don't want to be locked in. It's that sensation of, I want control. And a lot of marketers tend to feel that way, where they're like, I want to be in the pilot seat. I don't want you to tell me which billboards I can have and which screens I should be on. I just want you to let me pick and choose when I want it, and also for me to pause whenever I want and be able to pull out the budget whenever I want. So from that standpoint, it really was beneficial for a lot of our marketers who've kind of gone the other way and said, well, I do have the budget to buy this traditionally, but I'm not going to do that because I want to be able to control this $1,000 at a time or $500 at a time. So we've had a lot of people do that as well.
In terms of the billboard owners, are they seeing more value from this in terms of revenue?
Yeah, so it's all incremental for them. So we've got, for the most part, because we're filling vacant spots, they were never making money on that anyway. So us, we've been, generating revenue that was basically lost. And 80% plus of our users have never used Outdoor before. So it's new revenue sources as well. And potentially for a lot of these guys, it's new leads. So some of our customers do go the other way as well, where they would start with us and then go, okay, well, now that I've gotten to this point of spending like $50,000 of ad budget, I've got enough kind of budget that I can negotiate directly and bring the price down so they can get a better deal than what they would through our platform, because our platform will sell it at whatever rate they've set. So if for example they said, hey, look, I've got 100 grand, but I don't want to buy it through the standard rate that you're advertising to the public, I want to get a special sort of discount for me, there is that option as well. So there is that kind of symbiotic relationship where we send people directly to the publisher, but also the publisher sends people to us because they're like, yeah, we don't have the account management capability of working on this $5,000 campaign because we don't have enough staff for that. So the self-service ends up being a really good solution at smaller budgets, and then sort of going direct ends up being a decent solution for, sort of massive budgets.
Yeah, those larger budgets probably need a bit more high-touch consulting work and advertising, probably strategy around it, not just a Google AdSense equivalent of Facebook ads like you mentioned before.
Yeah, exactly. And that's basically where we've been sitting in the market, is pretty much just sort of that sub 30K per campaign kind of spot. Usually if it goes anything above that, it ends up becoming more of a managed service, and we don't generally have the resources to run a full managed service and sort of strategy. So we will just either refer that to an agency, or basically we don't want to screw it up. So we do what we can. Where the self-service shines, we let it shine.
Interesting model. They've disrupted that completely, because it became I think it's a model that was quite cost prohibitive, and now anyone can use it. I think Anthony mentioned we should try billboard ads.
Yeah, that's how I found them. I just was Googling one day and it popped up in an ad, I think, and then I'm like, all right, well, we should just try this.
It costs 20 cents every X amount. I think that's how you got introduced.
But I want to take a photo with a billboard or my own billboard ad behind me.
Good to know our ads are working.
Yeah,
that's classic. In terms of some of the challenges you've had along the journey, so obviously there's a bit of a technical component to this. How has that played out for you in terms of piloting, trialing this out? How did it all start? Was it one or two billboards? Where did it all begin?
Yeah, we actually went out to the billboard companies and we said, can we do this with your help? Let's build this a solution here. And this was sort of 2019-ish, and COVID hadn't hit yet. So at the time, the companies essentially said, no, we don't need anything like this. We've got enough demand. We're not having any vacancies or anything like for you to be able to sell in this way. Essentially, we got laughed out the door everywhere we went to say this is not going to work. So we just built it anyway. We were like, well, whatever, we're going to build this. We're going to find a way. And we sort of kind of did that really horrible startup thing that you're not supposed to do. Is like, build it and they will come, and and we were lucky. They did come. So what happened was we had a bunch of customers that were interested. Right from the start, they wanted it. Like we spoke to agencies, and we had done our research, and the agencies were like, yes, we definitely want something like this because we can't access out of home. The publishers didn't want something like this because it sort of shifted. It was an additional player in the industry, and it shifted control away. So we got perceived as a bit of a threat for not having direct access to the advertisers. But obviously, we try to play as diplomatic as possible and say, most of the people that we're going to be serving don't use it. So we're trying to create an entryway, for people to come in and do that. I think the biggest struggle that we did have has always been, and still continues to be, is always the industry relations with our partners, with our suppliers, trying to make sure that we're not stepping on toes and make sure that we're complementing what they're doing, not trying to replace what they're doing. Because for the most part, all of our partners realize that we're in our own sort of niche off to the side that nobody wants to play in. Because a lot of the time there's this attitude that small businesses are hard work. There's there's too much pain and suffering to try to create a business that serves small business. So we've gone, kind of head into this area, and everyone else is kind of going, okay, well, if you're going to take care of that, that's
look
fine.
after it on your own.
Yeah. So there was a lot of challenge on the business side. The tech side hasn't been overly challenging for us because we've got freedom to do what we want. We just have to plug a lot of APIs together and connect them and make sure that the diplomatic relationship with all these companies are fine. But I think that is the hardest part. It's like making sure that people are seeing what we're doing, they understand what we're doing, and they understand why we're doing it, who we're serving, and why they should work with us, and why they shouldn't see us as a threat in a lot of cases. So I think that's been pretty difficult for us to communicate. I think it also obviously started from being not being taken seriously to being taken a little too seriously. So we're sort of trying to bring it back a little bit and try and say, well, look, we're trying to solve a problem for you, and we can't succeed unless you succeed as well. So that sort of stuff that we have to communicate is often quite challenging.
And I find it interesting. So it's more of a challenge with the partners and the billboards and the companies themselves.
Not
Yeah.
competition. It's more of like a symbiotic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
Like the little fish swimming along under the shark.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. Because we've all of our competitors who do the same thing we do are our partners as well. So we buy from them, and they also have products like ours that sort of compete in the same space, sort of. But we're kind of adjacent to everyone because we serve the small business, which they don't want to do. So a lot of people are building enterprise solutions because realistically, in a traditional sense, is where all the money is. You serve, you get BMW under your wing, you're kind of set. You don't have to do anything else. But from our perspective, we kind of said to ourselves, like, we don't want to be kept afloat by one giant fish. We wanted to, like, if we lost it, your company collapses and you're just built on one giant client. We wanted to sort of make ourselves stable by having lots of little clients and serving them. And we've just gone down that rabbit hole. And the more our product develops, the more we go down that rabbit hole of tiny campaigns. Like I just saw one that came up for $20, and it's like $20 campaigns everywhere. That
Wow.
most people are happy. They're like, yeah, I spent $20. I did this. I recognize that $20 isn't going to get me the world, but I know that it's possible, so I feel comfortable doing that. Yeah.
It's taken it down to that whole Google advertising level, right? I can go and put $100 campaign up there, which was
Yeah.
not possible 3 or 4 years ago. There was no way to get to that path. So I think everyone's always after the enterprise client. Yes, I agree. They're great to sign off, but they may take you 2 years to sign one. While you're doing that, so you might grab 1,000 little clients. So yeah, there's a pros and cons of both. But then it becomes, how do you manage those little clients? I think probably some of the challenges you may have along the journey is how do you educate them, make it seamless for them to come on, embed their ads, because they've got to be on a billboard. So there's some quality to these things as well. They can't just be junk uploaded, and just managing that experience. Otherwise, you're going to have some pixelated description of something going on. They spend $100 and not going to read it. So yeah, there's a bit of that to it, but just making it as seamless as possible, I think would have been, in my mind, the way I would have approached the first step. But the challenge in what you got going on in the world of everything else, in the billboards and the potential partners and who you work with, yeah, that's a fascinating one, because they could probably see you as a potential threat, even though you are saying that I'm servicing the small businesses. Yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't go direct. So I get that challenge and why they could still perceive that. But that's just a balancing act for you to manage. But yeah, that's an
Yeah.
interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, the creative one you mentioned is very much a challenge that we face. There's one I completely forgot because I've been kind of insulated from it in recent
Yeah.
months. Being on the development side rather than the customer facing side. We do.
Yes.
Our account managers face this all the time, where they're like, okay, well, we've got clients who supply low quality artwork, so you have to educate them around what a good creative looks like and how to generate that. And we've been one of the big sort of challenges that has crept into the dev territory has been how can we sort of templatize this so that people have sort of a Canva kind of
Yeah, type
sandbox
model.
where they
Yeah.
can build their own creatives. That's kind of the next chapter for our platform is looking at how can we build a creative builder tool. And we've been stuck in a very interesting space as far as that one goes because creative is not our. So we want to stay pure for the moment. It's like our focus is the delivery of ads and making it seamless to buy the inventory. We don't want to be diving into building a creative builder tool that will always be a sort of like a side focus for us, and we wouldn't give it the sort of energy that it needs. Um, because we'd initially attempted to approach Canva for an integration where we said, look, can we sort of like have a direct sort of export directly from Canva into Cassie? And we like I think Canva is sort of walking away from that sort of implementation of their platform inside other platforms.
Yeah, I know they used to
Yeah,
do
they
that. I don't know if
don't
they
have
stopped
many
it. Yeah,
integrations
We used
outwards
to
at
have the
all
Canva
really
button.
anymore.
I think they still might
yeah,
have a Canva button,
yeah.
but
You'll be able
they've
to put it in your app and then get an export straight into your app. But if that's stopping, yeah, that's the
their
challenge for you.
attitude has changed.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know if they've stopped it entirely yet, but I
Okay.
noticed that they moved away. Like that the attitude very much changed towards you should be building your app into Canva, not the other way around, which was fair enough from them. But
Yeah.
we were like, okay, if we build a creative tool, what percentage of our users are actually going to use it?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a tough decision because it is complicated tech.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
got
yeah.
one in our product,
And you know,
and
even if we built
3%
it,
of
people
people use
won't
it.
use it. And then if those people who do use it, it's going to be a very small minority of our users, and we have an
Yes.
additional sort of thing to maintain. And it's like,
Yeah.
it makes life really difficult. So what we really wanted was Canva to be able to integrate with our platform.
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand it because that's not your core
Yeah,
solution. Your solution is serving ads at micro increments, right? So that's the objective of what you're doing there. But the creative stems a problem, and we're in a similar space. We've got a product in pharmacy. I think Anthony mentioned a little bit, which is more just imagine ticketing, but digital and paper-based ticketing that gets distributed at store levels for execution around catalogs, etc. We've got our own little editor in there, but we would only push it so far. It's more of a text-based editing. It's
Oh, it's
not.
got drag
Yeah.
and drop and
Yeah.
text, but yeah, it
It's
can
the-
add images with
Yes.
flyers and brochures. It's
Yeah.
Canva basic.
Canva basic, Canva basic, but the type of stuff you're trying to achieve is a digital ad, which needs to be Canva
Yeah,
101.
it's a video or it's
Yes.
a good image,
yeah.
text and everything. Yeah.
So we actually looked into what Adobe was doing as well with Adobe Express, and trying to see what, because we need it's annoying because we need the industry, as in the industry leaders, to lead that side, because at
Sure.
the moment, I mean, where this whole thing is kind of going is towards things like dynamic creative. One big problem. You, depending on the billboards you choose for your campaign, you might have to upload 20 different creative specs. An easy solution to that would be a HTML creative that dynamically resized
Yeah.
every spec. You just kind of design a landscape.
Because
And
they're all different sizes, aren't they? They're slightly
Yeah, they are,
variations
they
of
are.
Oh god,
Every screen.
that's a
We've got
mess.
some stuff like
Okay.
but it is still an absolute mess. And where
Okay.
we wanted to do HTML for that, but the problem is Google used to have Google Web Design or something like that, where they used to be able to make the ads, but it didn't really take hold as an industry standard for marketers to use. Because we could easily go, well, yeah, so this is the tool, use this, directly export it from there, put it in here, but no one uses that. People use Canva, but Canva doesn't sort of natively have that sort of, I think the native sort of resizing, I think they include it as part of their pro thing, but I don't know how it works. And then you look at sort of Adobe's versions as well, but it's all sort of SVG based, and it becomes tricky to kind of like bring that in because we almost need a bigger player to go ahead and do that. So that we can just kind of take it and say, hey, look, these guys have this really
use
great
this, yeah.
API, and we can just plug it into ours and say, hey, if you're using this, you've got everything set up for you already. But the problem is we're just not big enough to build the thing and let the customers, just tell them you have to learn this, otherwise you're not going to be able to use it. It won't work for us. So yeah,
It's one of the challenges of startups. Where do you invest your money? And it
Yeah.
comes down to acquisition, in my mind. Like, at this point, you're probably a bit more beyond a startup, right? So you've got customers on the system. How do you acquire more? And that is not an acquisition problem. That becomes more of a servicing customer support issue for you, from what I understand.
It's a quality
Yeah,
problem of like the end output.
correct.
It's not even like quality customer. It's
Yeah. Oh,
definitely.
yes, so you can onboard the customer, but if they're producing crappy ads, their experience might be not as good as it could have been, which limits your ability to resell. So it's a snowball sort of effect for you there.
Does all the creative that gets uploaded get reviewed?
Yes. So we essentially triage the creatives that come through, and then we send it to the publisher. It's automated in that sense. Like we tick it off, and then it automatically gets sent to the publisher for final tick off, and then they tick it off in their player, and that is allowed to run. So we don't really run into many issues as such there, but it's just like it's getting to that point now where we're having to do a lot of internal management around what our admin panel and dashboard looks like, how we can get our admin stuff working more efficiently with artwork approvals and stuff, because we receive a massive, like at any given point in time, we've got 150 campaigns running globally, which, I mean, compared to, say, a Facebook or Google would be tiny, but compared to, say, a Billboard, standard for Billboard companies, this would be huge, So in that sense, we've got a lot of management that we have to do, and we inadvertently apply a lot of pressure on the media owners as well, because we're sending through a lot of artworks. We're sending through a lot of customers. So that was the thing, like we got an emergency call with one of our partners in the UK, because they were like, okay, so we weren't expecting this many customers to come through. We were expecting just this to be a sort of slow trickle, but you've kind of just hammered us on what's going on, and how can we make this easier? So we do have a lot of that where we've come in and we've shaken up existing processes, because those existing processes were never designed to take this kind of load. And we don't really have any sort of AI-based sort of image scanning tools or anything like that we're just saying, oh, like we'll just automatically approve these things. Eventually we're going to have to, but...
Yeah, you probably need to sort of look at that area. Yeah. Maybe that's the first area, just to get that process cleaned up for everyone.
As you scale, that's the hard part of the business to scale, because it needs manpower.
Yeah,
yes,
more manpower,
and that's the fundamental things. Like that's one of those areas we're probably going to be hiring assistants to look at this stuff and say, like, does it cut past the policy, tick and flick, get that through. But
they're the fascinating challenges that you have, because the more scale you get, the harder it is going to be. It's harder it is to manage this thing for you right now. Yeah,
That's probably not a problem you envisaged when you first started either.
No, when we first started, we got excited when artworks came through, and now it's just like, it's just bang, 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 bang.
It's the pain point of the business, right? It's fascinating because, you wouldn't have expected that.
We literally made an update. So the update that was about to be pushed out actually increases the friction required for a customer to load up creatives, just to slow down the number of creatives that people are uploading.
You're purposely slowing them down.
So we're purposely slowing them down. And we've got a bulk uploader for creatives, but all of those come through to us. So what we did was we limited it now to 5 files rather than 50.
Classic.
And we're purposefully doing the opposite of what we were initially doing, but it's because it's the only way that it makes sense, and it's the only way that it's fair to all the customers who are trying to upload artworks in a reasonable way, versus all the people who just take their entire images folder from their desktop and upload it to the platform.
Just don't even look at a screen or anything. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Oh, classic. In terms of... I think people don't realise when they go into business, you're solving one problem, but now you're solving different ones. So as things scale, evolve, and shift and pivot, you are going to face different challenges that sort of come at you, and just change the way you need to do things. And I imagine you wouldn't have thought you're throttling things 2 years ago at all, in terms of how they're uploading. It's probably something that became to any sort of thought to you. So, it's fascinating how things evolve, change, and then new challenges arise. There's never a smooth process in business. It's always one challenge after another to solve for.
Very much so.
You solve that one, and the next one comes.
Yeah, you're right. Like, I would have never thought I'd be throttling artwork uploads, years ago, and I never thought I'd be trying to slow people down, because people, they really get excited, and then they want to do stuff that is just, it's not going to happen, because people want to do sort of personal messages where they're pranking their friends or something and have
classic.
a photo of them taken when they were completely blackout drunk and with their underpants on the floor. And it's kind of like, and you kind of go, yeah, I'm going to put that on a billboard so that the whole world see what an idiot my friend is. And you're like, yeah, but we can't run that as an ad. So, you're trying to kind of like articulate that to people.
Yes.
But it takes up time, right? Like that, every email you send, every email that's 15 minutes taken away from you, and how much does 15 minutes cost for each person doing that? And we're trying to work out ways to sort of, because there's a lot of educational content that we need to put up. There's a lot of stuff that we need to do, what automated answers and better FAQs and all of this sort of content pieces that we need to have in a way that's digestible for people, so they're not kind of just going, "Oh, deluge of text. I'm not gonna bother reading that. I'm just gonna ask the question." And then you kind of go, "Well, some support person has to spend 15 minutes answering that," and you're like, "Well, okay, what can we do here?" We're having a meeting tomorrow on that specific topic. It's
I
like,
think changing the behaviour of people is going to be a big
It's hard.
challenge for you. I would say you need tech to stop the behaviour.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I don't see a path forward for that. If you open it up to 1 million people, you're going to have the same amount of problems, if
So
not
all
more.
those systems have content moderation systems in place, and then there are people at some point, but they're only seeing a fraction of what actually goes
yeah,
through.
absolutely, yeah. And I think that's where we're going to be heading. It's just mostly a matter of like um, solving some of these initial sort of issues
Yes.
with just the systems that the tools that are available to the admin staff, and then going from there, it's like, okay, what can we put in as an abstraction layer along here? Because the platform automatically rejects content. It's not
Yep.
like but we can only reject what we see in the metadata. We can't reject
You're not looking at imagery at the moment,
image.
yeah.
So
Yep.
that's kind of like the next step where we can say, hey, look, there's too much of this shade of yellow in your ad. Um, that sort of stuff, that we can
Yeah.
automatically do. But it's going to take some time before we have that. But I think that there's a lot of work to be done in between as well. And it's like, you're right, the challenge is like balancing out what do you devote the time and effort towards? Because our next update is entirely looking at sorry, the one subsequent to this is entirely looking at how do we make stuff easier for staff, and how do we make reporting more useful, being able to see, from a marketing standpoint, where all the people are coming in, being able to track all that information, and from a sales standpoint, seeing, what's effective, who our best customers are, because right now we can assess that, but it is like a few clicks away. We want that to be like up in your
Just
face.
in your face, yeah. Just the dashboard there. I can see everything. I know what's happening around the business. I know what the key
Yeah,
triggers are for me to turn on and off flow. I think, yeah, that's important to any business. Yeah, it's not that easy to capture though. I imagine you've got some data that's tracking around how people utilize your platform as well, and how do you best utilize that information. So there's a bit to that to think about as you optimize.
oh yeah, for sure. Like we've got, I think the issue right now is that we've got a wealth of data, but very little in the way of analytics
Okay.
to sort of assess it and understand how we can turn that into actionable insights.
Yep.
Because most of it is like you look at it and it's like, what do I do with this information? What does this mean?
Have you tried throwing it into ChatGPT and see what it spits out?
No, I haven't got
just,
that.
just
I really should.
have a go.
Just test it.
Just take the entire thing and just upload it in. Like,
Just
can you make
upload it in, or a portion of it, and see what it does for you. Just have a go. Have a go. Yeah,
Oh, it could be fun.
yeah, a bit of fun, but sounds like there's a bit to do. In terms of where do you want to go? What's the intent for Cassie? What's the plan?
Geez, honestly, I was expecting this question. I thought I'd prep myself for it, but honestly, um, I think we're looking for that self-sufficiency still. So we're still, like we're trying to transition the sort of structure of the business at this stage so that we can, as founders, be a bit more hands-off. Um, where we haven't taken on any capital, we're still fully bootstrapped, we're running off of revenue, and we're relatively comfortable. The issue right now is kind of like gearing up for scale, and that is kind of where we're sort of stuck. So again, there is going to come that point very soon for us where it exceeds our capacity as founders to just kind of hold on to this and wrangle it. We need additional people on board, but it's uncharted territory for us. But so we want to sort of get that right. we're going to make mistakes, of course, but we want to sort of put our best foot forward in terms of structuring, documenting, making sure the processes are in place, and we've done all of the best practice that we can do. In terms of where it's going from there, we're honestly not even sure yet, because we're just riding the wave. Like, we make a cool product, we keep our customers happy. That's just been the primary motives. Like, has just been, are the customers happy? Great. Okay, good. Are we happy
That's a tick. Yes.
as founders? Are we happy? No, we're a little bit stressed. Okay, we need to fix that. It's been that's been pretty much the motives for us. Is like, do we enjoy what we're doing? Are we building a good product that people enjoy using? And as long as we can get those aligning, I think we're quite satisfied. We don't sort of have these massive ambitions of being like the biggest, blah for out of home or anything like that. What we're probably going to find is that we will head towards an acquisition at some point where we will reach that stage where we need a bigger company to parent it. Where, like, I imagine we will hit some kind of wall or an impasse with creative. We'll hit an impasse with a bunch of other things, like people want to be able to connect what they're doing with out of home with what they're doing online. And right now, we can try and make that easy, but there is only so far we can go before it's like, well, another company owns that entire vertical. Google owns all of that data, Facebook owns all of that data, or Salesforce does, or Oracle does. And at that point, we would probably be in that position where we're saying, like, the best path forward for us would be to just step back and have some other company take over this IP and run it as their own company. I think that's what happens to most companies in our space, because the problem with the niche is that it's nice, but there is only so far you can go before you hit that limit of what.
Before we get the limit of the wall, yeah. So we feel that we've got, like I said earlier, we've got a niche product in pharmacy, and it's niche. It's great. It's kicking back, but it's not in a position where it's a sole business. It's more of a business that sits there, ticks along, generates great revenue. But reality is, to scale that out, you need serious capital to take it overseas and change it. And the type of product it is, it doesn't draw much investment. So similar thinking, it's like at some point you're probably going to have to exit it, or otherwise it will just fizzle away if you don't really drive it.
I think the main thing would be, like, all of us, we want our efforts to kind of be recognized, So if we can, like, be able to say it didn't die, it got merged into something else.
It's great to have a merger and acquisition, provided they succeed. 9 out of 10 times I hear this, they don't really succeed. But if it has to be the right company, it's a fascinating challenge that they have when a big company takes over something a bit smaller, and then all of a sudden it gets muddled into all the red tape and all the bits and pieces that go to the world of corporate.
Absolutely crap. We saw this with a couple of companies that got acquired, where we were seeing them grow really well, and then they get acquired and everything just stops. Like, all the development stops.
Have you tried raising capital at all? It's not been a path that you guys have gone down.
No, I mean, not. The problem that we have is that investors that we've spoken to so far have seen it as a high risk kind of proposition, where we don't actually directly serve. We serve the customer, but we don't directly own the assets or directly serve the assets.
So the risk is you might get eaten up and taken off. Yeah.
So we say one of our contracts expires, we're suddenly a sitting duck. That's the attitude, and that's really risky for most investors kind of coming in, unless they're in the space. If they're in the space, the problem is you introduce conflict of interest, and then no one wants to work with you. And then that's sort of where we're stuck, because we've had a lot of interest from other billboard companies wanting to own it, but then as soon as you do that, no other billboard company wants to work with you. So we either need to become, so essential to a lot of these companies that they have no choice but to do that, which is very unlikely, or we've got to find an independent investor who was happy to take on that kind of risk and say, well, that's just the way this works. Because we're not the only company that's like us. Like, there was one, Media Math, that just went bankrupt just recently. They weren't doing billboards; they were doing online ad serving. But they ran out of capital eventually, and that was the big risk for them, because once again they did exactly what we did. They don't own any of the infrastructure. They connect the infrastructure, and no investor wanted a piece of that, especially when it was in trouble. It was red flags all around, and they just let it collapse. But yeah, that's tricky for us. So that's basically why we made up our minds long ago that we were going to stay, a revenue-driven company, because we don't have to kind of go and demonstrate like, oh look, these contracts are going to last for 4 years, and then keep sort of extending those. Is just going to be entirely run on on results, and we don't have to fret too much about that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to say never. I think it's just a matter of we'll get to a point of revenue where we're like, we definitely need the capital injection, but we're probably more likely to take out a business loan because it might just be easier.
If you're revenue generating business loan, there's definitely options out there.
Yeah.
That's something we actually did an hour one about in that business we're talking about. So just a bit of a revenue, just if you want to keep investing, it's just upfronting it. So you just got to be conscious of that, because you have to pay that back, right? It's a bit different. So obviously investor money don't have to pay it back technically, right? But in the stream of a loan, you do need to pay it back, so you got to model it in, so it's not as So it's a 500k loan. You got to consider how you're paying that back over the journey and model it out properly, because you can put yourself in a problem if you don't manage that properly.
Yeah, for sure. And that's I guess that's the other thing, is like trying to manage the risk of doing that. And we'd only ever take up a loan that we knew we could pay back.
Yes.
With what like we'd probably take the equivalent of what we've got in the bank already, and then just kind of say like that's additional.
We're happy with that. Yeah.
And then if we pay back the full principal with some interest and we call it a day and square it off, if things go badly. But I mean, honestly, we did consider it actually this sort of financial year just gone by. We were going to take out a loan that essentially squared off our tax liability, so that we could put that into marketing directly.
Yep.
But we didn't end up doing it, because we actually had more revenue than we realized we were going to have, and then we just
that's a good problem.
a bit
Yes.
unpredictable. It was like, just spend all the money that we're getting. We just pour it into marketing and push it out from there. And we bought our database for a year, and we did all of that. So I think AWS was the only thing we didn't buy out, because we were still on credits at the time.
Got it.
But now that we're not, probably something we would do for the next financial year is just buy up as much AWS credit
as you possibly can. Yeah.
So,
It sounds like you're in a good spot. You're revenue generating, you're covering costs, making some money. That's where you need to be in business first step. So you've got a nice little base there. And it's about where to from here. Sometimes those decisions are difficult. That's where do you invest? What do you pivot to?
It's just that next step, right? Like the goals increase now. It's like you're going from that $1 million a year revenue to sort of hitting, like, how do you get to 10? How do you sort of cross that that gap? And I don't have the answer yet, because I'm like, oh man, 10xing revenue, that sounds horrifying, but it sounded horrifying from the start. Like when we first started, it's like, oh man, how would we get to $1 million in revenue? And then now
it's a big number when you start. It's like, wow, that's so far away.
And now it's like, how do I go from 1 to 10?
Different problems.
We don't. The question really is like, what's next in terms of what new curveball is going to be thrown at us, and how are we going to cope with that? It's basically what my brain's always at. It's like, okay, well, what's coming? What's next? But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun.
Definitely interesting. One question for you: have you considered buying assets, i.e., billboards?
We have considered it, but a lot of the time, most people don't make money on the actual asset, because of the cost of building one or
Building,
buying
servicing.
it, and then servicing it, and then dealing with the insurances around it and the council commissions and whoever the landlords are. It's often just not worth the effort. And then we also don't want to become a billboard company ourselves, because once again, that conflict of interest piece always will come in. I mean, if we're small, it's probably okay. Like we can own a couple here and there. No one's really going to care. But the issue is that this particular industry really appreciates independence. I think being completely third party helps you quite a bit from that trust factor. As soon as you're starting to dabble in the same stuff, you start to piss your partners off, and then you're in trouble again. So
It seems like a bit of a balancing act. Getting all the partners on side is a full time
very
job.
much so.
Yes.
Especially because we represent the advertiser for the most part, right? Like, so there's not a lot of people on the sell side don't like to share information with us on that front because we go into bat for the advertiser. We try and get costs down and things like that. And so we're I guess to some degree we're the enemy. So we do sort of struggle a little bit with that.
I find that fascinating. Your enemy. I would imagine they should be able to make more money out of you in the model.
Oh yeah,
but that would be my take. Yeah.
Oh,
You think you're cutting it up into smaller pieces. You should be able to charge a premium for those smaller
servicing
pieces.
customers they can't get access to.
That's
Effectively
usually what
giving them
happens.
like an Airbnb. They're utilising the assets that are going underutilised. Otherwise, every current existing, if they got six slots, they're only serving 3. They're halving the value
Yeah,
of the service they're providing.
That's definitely, there is definitely that piece. I think there's just a lot of sort of education that needs to be done around that as we go along, and all these partnerships they evolve. They initially start off as a little bit sort of like a little hesitant.
Taste.
Eventually, we kind of go, oh, okay, well this is really really good, and this works really well for us, and it takes its time, but it gets there. But it is really just that, like, not seeing us as trying to steal their customers a lot of the time, and from by that same token, from our side, like getting our team to realize that we're not going to be losing customers because we're getting a new partner on board, and that they're having transparency into who we deal with, and because it goes both ways. Like, the trust element. So partners are often sort of a little bit skittish because they think that I suppose they think that we're going to suddenly start cannibalizing their existing customers, and then my team as well, they sort of get a bit skittish that anytime we get a new partner, that they have visibility into our customer base, and that is a little bit scary. And you kind of go, well, I mean, this is exactly the attitude that we're discouraging on that side. So we need to discourage it internally as well. And but yeah, it's all a learning, the journey, and there's a lot of learning to be had.
I think just this conversation, I'll be spending a hell of a lot of time with the partners on how your product can serve them more, even with their current client base. That's where I'll be investing some time if it was me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating position you're in. I feel like it's a balancing act, but if you can actually support them and help them drive more business, that's going to obviously win them over the long term. So you're already doing that on one front, but could you do that for their core customers? I'm not quite sure. But don't know the industry, don't know the market, but interesting challenges, and it's an operational / political challenge that you've almost got there, and how do you balance it?
It's not where I expected to be honest. I thought it would just be a challenge, but no, there is a lot of
when you start building tech, it's got nothing to do with tech, and you probably realize that by now. Yeah. So the reality is, it's a business model around it. It's people, it's customers, it's behaviors, it's changing behavior, changing process, education. The tech is just the supporting and the underpinning and delivery mechanism. I think that's where most people get lost and stuck, and you realize that as you go through the journey. I started out, it's just tech, but it's not tech in the end.
It's remarkable. We learned that. Like, this has been our first tech product, and I mean, we've done reasonably well.
So hats off for you getting this far. Most people don't even get a cent of revenue. So
good. You've done very well.
We've done. I mean, I'm really proud of the team. Like the way it's sort of come together, and how as one thing I wrote, had another interview with the local city council, and they asked me what I look back on and what I'm most proud of. And I'm like, the team, the way we come together, because as much as we bicker a lot, like we'll have like little spats over certain things, but ultimately we all work together really well, and it all comes together, in the end. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. Like you mentioned, it's not the tech. It's really the tech is just it's such a tiny piece, the whole, but there is so much around it. There's so much human stuff around it that we need to manage. Things that you didn't really expect from the start, where you kind of go, well, we need to really do this this human-centric stuff, and we need to make this appealing to people, not just, this solves a problem. It's more like, you want this thing, and also, this thing is not threatening, and all of that sort of stuff that we didn't expect to have to do, that we have to do. And the amount of tech work that needs to be done for internal operations as well was never anything that we'd expected. You kind of thought, well, we'll build the product and it's all this customer-facing tech, not internal tech. And you're like, no, actually, like a good 40% of this is internal tech that we need to fix. But yeah.
A fascinating story, Jeff. Really pleasure having you on the DevReady podcast. Probably a different one for people to be exposed to, given the position you're currently at. We've had a lot of people exiting and a lot of people in the early stage. I think you're in the middle of it, in the thick of things, and having some interesting problems to solve, I would say. And there always are. So, but revenue generating and probably in a good spot to drive it forward. And there'll be one step at a time, like it always is, right? So it's one step, one day, 1 week at a time, and you move forward from there. But anything can change and shift and pivot. So really appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey to date. Let's catch up in a year. I'd love to see where you're at. Just to see how it's tracking and how it's all going. But stay in touch. Really appreciate it.
Will do. I think, definitely in a year's time, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, like, honestly, I couldn't have predicted where we're at now last year. Because last year I would have thought, it would have been, like still kind of tiny-ish, and we're still small, but we're doing a whole lot better than we thought we would be doing. So, I wouldn't have said that we were going to be in 3 markets now at all. So, it'll be interesting to see in a year's time what that's like.
That's a good sign. We'll see how many ads we can slide in through your team.
Slide a few ads
by
in
next year.
Take some photos, send us a selfie. It'll be great.
Well, cheers, Jeff. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. See ya. Thank you.